So for my case study, I focused on an 8-year-old boy, Jason, who's in the second grade. An informal reading inventory assessment was given to Jason that included reading graded paragraphs and responding to questions about the readings. So to begin with, Jason was very cooperative and he was willing to read and answer all the questions with no problems, and he seemed to try to do his best on the assessment. So to begin, I tried to determine which grade level the reading inventory should begin at, and he was given a list of words to read out loud. Jason was able to decode a good percentage of the words. However, he was able to read the primer level at 90% and the first grade level at 80%. So through the IRI, I was also able to find out that Jason is able to read the primer level oral passages better than the first grade passages, where he read the primer at 95% at instructional level, but he experienced a difficulty reading the first grade level at a 90% at the frustration level. So his comprehension for the oral readings was at an instructional level at the primer grade level at 75%, and at the first grade level, he was at a frustration level at 40%. So it was a big difference there. When reading on the first grade level, Jason would get frustrated when he read words such as must instead of most and somewhere instead of something. And the instructional implications of these scores are clear that Jason should start at the primer reading material. The other part of the IRI assessment, where he had to read the silent readings, he seemed to almost be guessing on the answers and getting a little bit off track. He scored a 50% on the silent reading questions, and as for the first grade silent reading passage, he scored 40% correct at the frustration level as well. So I believe he was a little bit distracted. The stories might have not been of his interest. I feel like it might have just been careless errors. However, his retellings and his comprehension focused more on the characters and setting of the stories rather than actually the attention to the plot of the events. So, gathering all the IRI results, I believe an intervention program revolving around comprehension would be essential for Jason. It would definitely help him improve in this area. So I have a few plan of actions set in place to help the student improve reading comprehension. And the plan of action that I have is the technique through self-monitoring. When reading the passages Jason was provided with, Jason would point to each word with his finger and sound out each word. He also auto-corrected himself after mispronouncing the word. However, he didn't seem too interested in the readings, which is what I believe actually affected the comprehension results greatly. During the assessment, he would keep asking questions like, am I doing good? Or are we almost finished? And when it came to answering the comprehension questions, both on the oral and silent passage side, he seemed to almost be guessing and just throwing random answers into the air. The student also showed to be able to decode well and have read fluently, but as I said, the comprehension skills were weak. So through self-monitoring, I believe one technique that would be essential and great for Jason personally would be a frequency chart. I have a frequency chart here. So for this method, a student is given a frequency chart and he is instructed to read the assigned passage, and once the reading is complete, he has to answer as many questions pertaining to the story that he can without having to look back at the text, and he jots the number down. So once the number is jotted down, then he continues to reread the text for a second time, and he attempts to answer the remaining questions. So once the second attempt is complete, he jots that second number down too. So the point of this frequency chart is to keep track of their results and to encourage them to increase the number of answered questions from the very first attempt instead of having to reread the passage over and over again and answer the remaining questions. Another graphic organizer tool that I believe would be very beneficial for Jason is a text look-back method, also referred to as a tally chart. It's very beneficial in the reading comprehension area. This is a tally chart. So in this method, Jason would be given a tally chart and he is instructed to read the assigned reading, And once the reader is finished, he has to answer the comprehension questions, keeping a tally of how many times he needs to look back into the text to answer that question. So the student should keep track of the results, and this chart actually encourages them to decrease the number of times that they have to look back into the text. I think it's a great method, and I think in time it would definitely motivate the child to try to get less and less and less tallies on here. I think both are a great technique in a sense of self-monitoring for the child to stop themselves and motivate themselves to the amount of times they need to look back and the amount of times to answer a question from the first attempt. For this specific study, I believe it's best that Jason receives a self-monitoring intervention 3 to 4 times a week. He will be assessed through observation, checklists, charts, and these graphic organizers. The purpose of teaching and implementing through this self-monitoring technique, I believe, is to help Jason with his reading comprehension and help him improve in this area. And I truly believe that in time, with consistency, he should progress, and self-monitoring is a great way to help him. And in time, the intervention slowly fades, and I believe that the child will start to independently self-monitor. Also, another important thing is parents and teachers should definitely collaborate. Teachers do their thing in the classroom as the parents should do their part at home. Parents should always be on top of their child when reading at home. Always encourage reading, always set aside time to reading, always help your child decode words, recognize words wherever you are, whether it's going to the store or reading a book or seeing signs anywhere on the go. And I believe read alouds and shared readings, guided readings, they're a great way to encourage reading and only help the child's success. So in time, as I said, I definitely believe that this intervention program would help with Jason's reading comprehension, and we hope to see it work through all of this. And also, one of the alternatives that if this reading comprehension technique through self-monitoring was not to work, I also have, as I forgot to mention, another plan would be to start maybe a sequencing intervention with him. I believe sequencing, other than self-monitoring, is also a really great intervention when it comes to reading comprehension, because it makes the child focus and stop and realize the important parts of the story. They have a graphic organizer that can also help them. There's the characters, the setting, and all the events of the story, and they can jot them down as they read the story. I think it's great ways to help with reading comprehension and to definitely see improvements.